I'm here with Dyron Darty. My name is Daniel McCoy, editorial director for Renew.org, and Dyron, who's a professor of world religions at Pepperdine University. Um, Dyron, let me think of a good question to ask you to kind of introduce people to you. What would you say is the weirdest thing about living in Malibu, California? Strangest thing about living in Malibu?
I would say in Malibu, I would say that so many really wealthy people live here. Anything from like Saudi princes will have a house here, or extremely wealthy businessmen and women in America will have a place here, or famous movie stars. You see them, you'll see them walking around at the store or whatever. So it's just such an elite place. And then you have Pepperdine, which Pepperdine, we're considered kind of the hood of the college professors are considered kind of the hood of Malibu. I mean, I say that in jest because Malibu is a wonderful place. It's one of the Pepperdine is a wonderful place. It's one of the most beautiful college campuses in America. But it is kind of a surreal world. Like you going out to eat. I mean, you could easily pay $100 a plate, depending on the restaurants. So if you're going to do like me, like I'm going to go, actually tonight, my wife and I are going to go to, we're going to drive about 10 miles from here to go eat supper. We're going to actually have supper with a Sikh family. So that'll be fun. But you kind of have to leave Malibu unless you're going to eat at McDonald's, which we often do. But you kind of have to leave Malibu to get into kind of the normal world, unless you want to pay, $350 for a pair of blue jeans. So it's
Wow.
this false reality, because the incomes are so high for the people that live off campus.
Mhm.
On campus, you get a lot of normal professors. I don't want to say blue collar, but you get kind of more ordinary, average people, teachers, people that teach and research for a living. But yeah, that's been kind of funny to watch for the last 18.
Yeah, that's fascinating. What I want to know is there a Walmart in Malibu?
Oh no. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you got to go a
I
long.
wouldn't like that at all.
I know it. I know it. That's been what makes it, because everyone needs a Walmart. Now I'm thankful that Jeff Bezos came into the world and gave us Amazon, because
Yeah.
instead of Walmart, we just order everything, even gum from Amazon,
Wow.
because I don't want to pay Malibu prices for a stick of gum.
So we're talking about Scientology in this conversation. We're going to have a conversation with Scientologist Susanna Johansson, who's Director of Public Affairs for the Church of Scientology in Western United States. And so Dyron, what is Scientology? How would you summarize it for us in a way that we can kind of go into this conversation with some background knowledge of what this very recent religion, what it's all about?
Yeah. Okay. So the thing about Scientology, that you can't disconnect it from the guy that created it. I don't want to say created it, because that sounds like that it's not real outside of his mind, which a Scientologist would say, no, he didn't create it. He just kind of discovered it. So he was a famous science fiction writer. He pumped out books like in the 1950s and 40s and 50s and 60s. He wrote a lot of kind of what they call pulp fiction, a lot of science fiction, just churned out books. He was a prolific writer. His name was L. Ron Hubbard. He's kind of a Renaissance man. He did a lot of different things. He was he was a shipman. He'd get out on ships, and he was in the military for a while. He was a writer. He's just kind of an interesting guy. I would encourage our viewers to go to a Scientology center, and or you can tune in. Scientology has their own TV station. You can, catch a kind of an overview of L. Ron Hubbard's life, or just get on the internet and click around. But he was a really, really interesting fellow. But he wrote a book called Dianetics, which is basically a kind of a self-help book. So he lived from 1911 to 1986. So he died in the 1980s. But I would say his Dianetics is kind of a self-help guide, but it's not just self-help. It's one of the best-selling self-help books that's ever existed. So he published it in the 1950s. I can't remember the exact year, probably early 1950s, something like that. But his book sold like hotcakes. Now, one thing about L. Ron Hubbard that you kind of have to know, and it helps you gives you better context, is they don't believe that you should use drugs to overcome your mental problems. They basically believe that you need to overcome your mental problems through like counseling, but not just counseling with anybody, but with counseling through a Scientologist auditor. So a person that has been trained in Scientology to help you. But this whole system is the brainchild of L. Ron Hubbard. He wrote this book, Dianetics. Like I said, it sold a whole lot of copies. But then he defined kind of the metaphysical understanding of Scientology, which is basically that you are a thetan. All right, you're a thetan, which is basically like a soul. All right, you're a spiritual being, but you get stuck. You get stuck in sins, in addictions, in bad thinking, cyclical thinking. You get stuck in bad relationships. And so what you need to get clear. And that's actually the word that they use. But that takes a long time to get clear. And so what you do is they have classes. You actually early classes, maybe you go and just talk with the auditor, with the person that's going to kind of walk you through it. They're going to hook you up to an e-meter. This is this meter that you're going to connect yourself to, and it shows like where you have stresses, where you have impediments that are stopping you from thinking clearly. So it's kind of like modern kind of pop psychology, but it gets pretty deep because they believe in reincarnation, that you've been around forever, and kind of like the Eastern religions believe in reincarnation. But what you want in Scientology is it's a belief system to help you in the here and now, to help you achieve clarity. And so you pay for classes. These are classes that you're just like you were going to pay a counselor. These are classes that are going to walk you through this, but you're not going to resort to medicine. In fact, L. Ron Hubbard had a big problem with the psychiatric field. And so you're going to see this in Scientology, and you'll see this like in, a lot of the movie stars who practice Scientology, which, by the way, Scientology, its epicenter is in LA and also in Florida. These are kind of the two epicenters, and out in the Caribbean. They have their church structure is based on a ship. Their high offices is based on a ship. I think it's called the Free Winds. But so LA and Florida, but LA really is kind of its epicenter. And so here in my backyard, there's lots of Scientology centers, and they're putting and they do lots of good in the community. They do after-school programs. They help people get off of their addictions, but it's kind of a religion for the here and now, how to get past these impediments that you have, and you can get clear and remove the things that are causing you anxiety, causing you depression, causing you addiction. Scientology, very practical. It's dealing with that. Now, a lot of people say, well, isn't it deeper than that? Well, Scientology hasn't been around a long time. So it doesn't have these centuries and centuries, even millennia of history. So it's only been around since L. Ron Hubbard's life, which he really gets into this stuff in the 1950s. But anyway, there's a broad overview, and those are kind of the things that Scientology is trying to help you with.
Yeah. So in terms of similarities to Christianity and differences from Christianity, when I think of the differences, I think we are within Christianity, we're very much not just seen as spirit beings. I see a lot of as echoes of Gnosticism in Scientology, in the sense that if we could just remember that we are spirit beings, then we could kind of let loose of our entrapment to matter, and we could let loose of our fears that are connected to matter, and we could kind of become those pure spirit beings again. We could through remembering. And I think that's a big difference with Christianity, and that within Christianity, it's a very much views humans as embodied creatures. And yes, there will be a time when the body and the soul are separated at death, but that's not our final state. That's not a state of freedom and liberation. Rather, in the end, when Jesus returns, according to Christianity, we will be embodied. Yes, in an imperishable body, but a body nonetheless. In terms of similarities, there does seem to be a focus on how fear kind of does trap us, and how fear is something that we do need to not let dominate us. And I think, within Christianity, there are 365 different commands that all say, do not fear. And that needs to be something that we also recognize as being something we don't want to be dominated by. So, Dyron, what do you think? What are what is maybe a big similarity, a big difference with Scientology?
Yeah, as far as similarity, I would say mental health. Um, Christians want to be mentally well. Jesus wanted people like Legion, let's say, people that are like really messed up, caught in sin, a cycle of sin, or people that are, demon possessed or whatever. Jesus wants them to be clear of all that stuff. He wants them to be mentally whole, mentally healthy. Jesus is, a great medicine, we could say, the balm of Gilead. He helps us to achieve mental health if we follow his teachings. Scientology would say the same thing about their religion, that look, if you follow this religion, you will eventually get to a state of clarity. You'll get to a stage of clear. And there, there's no reason to doubt that they will help their people get to a stage where they're not scared of everything, they're not getting addicted to drugs and so forth like that. So it can be a very practical, humane religion in that regard. As far as differences, I would say the big difference would be L. Ron Hubbard versus Jesus. That would be a big difference, because a lot of people confuse Scientology with Church of Christ Scientists. These are two totally different things. Christian Scientists is a Christian sect. It's a type of Christianity. Scientology has nothing to do with Christianity. I mean, they don't hate Christians or anything like that. By no means. It's just that it's not connected to the Christian story, whereas Christian Science is. But they do share some things with Christian Science, like kind of a nervousness about the manufactured drugs that people get hooked on. Both Mary Baker Eddy from Christian Science and L. Ron Hubbard kind of had similar experiences, that they said, you get into that drug world where you're taking pills for this, you take medicine for that, anything mental health you take medicine for. They would say, no, stop that. In fact, some Pentecostal Christians and so forth would say, very similar things. That say, don't go down that rabbit hole of looking for the next great drug. Just rely on Jesus Christ. And another thing I think is different about Scientology and Christianity: Scientologists don't believe that they are the only way. You can be a Christian or a Buddhist or a Jew and still be a Scientologist. So it's very practical. So you can connect it to your faith. You can be a practitioner of Scientology while you're a Muslim, theoretically. Now, I don't think that's not going to be common, but that's what they say. That's what Scientologists say. Christians, of course, would say, no, I mean, Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. And maybe if Dianetics, written by L. Ron Hubbard, maybe if that has some, interesting things, that's fine. There's nothing against Christians reading self-help, but you don't need to become a member of Scientology in order to be a Christian. To be a Christian, it's Jesus. That's all you need. So that openness to other religions that goes on in Scientology, I don't think that Christians would have that same sort of pluralism approach.
Well, welcome. My name is Daniel McCoy, editorial director with Renew.org, here with Dyron Doherty of Pepperdine University. And we're here with Susanna Kane of the Church of Scientology. Susanna, can you kind of give a greeting and kind of give what you do at the church there?
Absolutely. So, hello. Yeah, my name is Susanna. I have worked for Church Scientology for 27 years. And I have worked in our public affairs office for like the past 15 years. I started working for a church in Copenhagen, Denmark, and I've been in Los Angeles for the past 20 years. I love working in public relations because it gives me a huge opportunity to keep interacting with the entire community around me. Very much so engaging in interfaith dialogue. And engaging in interfaith dialogue has always been something very important to me because it brings everybody of faith, much closer together.
Susanna, one thing I love about Scientology is they know where to live. So Copenhagen, and of course, that's a beautiful city. I've been there. And then Los Angeles and Florida, California and Florida. It seems like Scientologists have very good taste in where to live.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened. It was a lot of our international administration, came to Los Angeles. I think like in the 70s, and it just became like that because of course in Los Angeles is such an important city and it's on the crossroads of the world, and in even much so on the crossroads of the world for interfaith. And what I keep hearing of people from other faith is that we on the West Coast are way more into that than on the East Coast. Actually, I have never experienced any other things. So I just know how it is here.
Yeah. Well, speaking of interfaith, so you are a member of the Church of Scientology and work within that orbit. And I've done a lot with Scientology over the years. And of course, we share some mutual friends. And then whenever I'm abroad in my conferences, I always seem to run into Scientologists and I always establish good friendships with them. I have found them to be some of the kindest people. I've always been treated very, very good by Scientology folks, and I count some of them as friends. Now, sometimes whenever I speak about, so I teach world religions, Susanna, and sometimes whenever I teach about world religions, people have misconceptions about Scientology. Either they think that it's sometimes they'll confuse it with Church of Christ Scientists. You've probably heard that confusion, or they'll think of it as some scientific thing, from like the natural sciences. But it's different. It's unique. Could you tell us some of the misconceptions about Scientology that you've encountered over the years?
Yeah, I mean, the word Scientology means study of knowledge, right? So science, the Latin word "scio" for knowledge, and then you have logo, study of. Yeah, so some people confuse it with Christian Science. I think it is just simply like how it sounds, and that is that. But otherwise, a misconception has been that it is a closed group, and it is so far from that because anyone is welcome to study Scientology, no matter their faith or no faith for that matter. Scientology is the best way to describe it. It is all denominational, because we don't have a dogmatic viewpoint on God, and it allows a person to keep their own understanding of God in any way they wish. But Scientology is more like a path of knowledge to find out what is true for you. And we study a lot in the church. And those scriptures and everything we study and on Hubbard's books and our course rooms, it is available to anyone. And the books are available in libraries. So it is definitely not a closed group.
Great. And whenever you have traveled and interacted with like you're involved in the interfaith and movement, we could say, do you encounter any misconceptions that you just think, how in the world did you get that? Have maybe frustrating misconceptions that people have had that you've encountered over the years? Has that kind of thing ever, like, here we go again?
I mean, probably to some extent, but for me, it is so easy to handle.
Okay.
And it is so easy to handle with two-way conversation. It's very funny. In one of the courses that you do in Scientology, actually there are numerous courses on personal interaction and communication between people. Like there was a subject that Scientology founder Ellen Hubbard studied tremendously, and that subject was originally to help people that are doing Scientology counseling, so they would be very good communicators. So now these communication courses are then done by anyone, and you do the courses, and it's extremely fascinating because you do the course and you do drills on two-way communication, and you learn how to face any communication without, feeling uncomfortable. So it is incredible tool in public relations and in public speaking. Of course, like I said, it was developed for people that were doing one-on-one personal counseling to make them very good communicators. But it's those communication courses that I use in my line of work. And So I don't have any issue personally in dealing with people's questions about my faith. What I do take an issue with can be people that, are very narrow-minded in their ways. And I want to say, I think anyone of faith have, experienced that. People, they can ask, silly questions just because they haven't looked for themselves. And that is one thing that I find is that, as a generality, and it's not everybody are that way, but like people take to mainstream media and adopt a viewpoint without even exploring the subject on their own.
Yeah.
And
go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah, no, go ahead.
Well, I was wondering, is there maybe a concept within Scientology that people have trouble understanding? One that, in particular, people have a difficulty wrapping their minds around.
The one main thing that is being that it is a closed group and that is not open for everyone. Like the thing that it's a closed knit group, or it's a closed group not available for any outsider. That is something which is a very big untruth, because we have our own TV station, we have a big public information center in every church that anyone is welcome to come in to watch videos about our beliefs. And usually those are just made of glass. So it is very, very open. And I think that's been like the main thing. And I haven't really actually encountered that in interfaith setting. That's actually, I find refreshing with working in an interfaith area, because I don't find that there. Of course, people that work in interfaith are already having a fundamental agreement that we are here on the same terms. So that makes it very easy. I work with, I do tours with university students, or just generally people that I encounter anywhere in my line of work, just in Los Angeles. So there's more with that. What I would say that question comes up.
Have you met with some of my students before, Susanna?
I don't know if I did. I have met with students of other universities, but I know they can. I just don't think I interacted with them personally. But touring university students is like, I love it. It's like a hobby to me. It is so much fun, because they always throw questions at you and you have to answer them. And they are always very inquisitive and very wanting to know.
Well, I usually reach out to Janet, but it's good to have someone, because Janet's a very busy lady. So sometimes she's has directed me to somebody else. And so it's good to have your name, especially knowing that you enjoy that. But I often send students to Scientology centers, and they do interviews and walk around and look at the different different things. Susanna, one thing that you talked about when you talked about closed group, that I have quite a bit to say about that, and that is the concept of a cult. I mean, you well know, you've probably heard that term a lot. Basically, that term has lost its usage in the professional academic world, because we've come to see that cult is basically it's not a thing. I mean, cult is a judgment. Whenever somebody says, because I mean, even as a Christian, I've been accused of being in a cult. People say, "Oh, you're part of a Christian church. You're in a cult." And I know people have been very harmful to Scientology, and just lots of religions. People will say, so you're in a cult. And I want to hear your thoughts on this. But it's very damaging to do that, because when you say somebody's a member of a cult, you're basically just saying you don't like what they believe. Because
exactly,
cult doesn't really have a meaning. It's just you're in a group that I don't like.
That is exactly what that is exactly. It has like a semantics, and it has changed the meaning of the word. Like, I don't think anyone would ever use that on themselves, because it just means exactly like you said, you're part of something that I don't like, full stop.
Yeah.
But that goes back to what I talked about. They don't even know what they don't like about it, because they haven't looked at it themselves.
Yeah.
And
go ahead, Susanna.
And that is, I mean, it is, I don't know, like religion has been an area of persecution for since it has been around. And I don't know how to like, I don't know, it's kind of strange that is how it goes. But the way I look at it is that, okay, Scientology is a very young religion. They've only been around since the 1950s. And if you look at the world around us, like, cultures change very slowly. It took, I know, hundreds of years for, like, the early Christians were being persecuted. It took hundreds of years for America to realize that slavery wasn't correct and could be addressed. And I always think of that first doctor in Hungary that said that you have to wash your hands before you help a woman give birth. I think his name was Semmelweis.
Saved so many lives.
And he saved so many lives. Before, dying in childbirth was a very common thing.
Yeah.
And they laughed at him.
Yeah.
And that was just, for us, that would be like outrageous, something like that today. Anyway, so that was just an example of like how ideas had to be fought for. And
well, and
a lot of, yeah. And so when somebody says it's a cult, like, they don't even know what they talk about, because they haven't looked at it themselves.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And I will say for our viewers that what we say in academia nowadays is we say new religious movements, because there's no judgment there. And usually it means, the last couple 100 years or something. It hasn't been around a long, long time. Religious meaning there's religious aspects, and a movement is something that stayed together, and they're staying together over time. So that's kind of a nonpartisan, non-judgmental way. And by the way, your colleague that we talked about earlier, Susanna, she and I, we meet at conferences that have to do with new religious movements. And so we've really learned to understand how damaging the word cult is, because sometimes in all continents, if you label something a cult, sometimes people want to do violence because they think they're doing something really, really good. Oh, I'm going to go attack the cult. And they think the society will approve of them for attacking the cult. So I would argue we got to be really careful with that word cult, because you just might be, you just might be fueling somebody's anger and aggression towards a religious minority. And I don't think anyone wants that. I don't think we want to see religious minorities persecuted and hurt just because of ignorance.
Yeah, exactly. I fully agree. And new religious movements is exactly what it is.
Yeah, and in the case of Scientology, it's quite new, 1950s, say, not even a century.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we want to ask you, or we want to invite any questions that you might have about Christianity. So obviously you come from Sweden, I believe you said, and Christianity was dominant there for centuries. Nowadays it's more a country. But do you have any questions about Christianity that Daniel and I could try to answer? Maybe misconceptions?
I don't think it's misconception. One thing that I did, I really at one point looked at its whole tree of why are there so many branches? And I knew a Christian scholar who even emailed me a tree of how it started and all the different branches of Christianity. And, like the Protestant, faith, then you have the Lutheran, then you have the Baptist, the Methodist. And as I work in Interfaith, I really made a point of, clearing up these words. Because otherwise I don't know who I was talking to. And and one thing that is very big in Scientology is you always clear up the words you don't fully understand. That's part of the way we study. Scientology or anything, academics, whatever you want to study, you always clear up your words. So for me, I made a point of really trying to understand it. So from your perspective, why are there so many different branches?
Yeah. Part of it is been around so long. Christianity, it's been around a long time, and over time, and this, I'm sure if Scientology survives 2,000 years, it's going to break into different branches. It's just part of religious movements. Churches all religions. Like you go into Islam, they have so many different schools of thought. Of course, Christianity has so many different schools of thought. You got Catholic. In fact, there's a few branches of Roman Catholic. You got Eastern Orthodox that has a number of different movements, and then you get to Protestantism, which some estimates are that there's maybe 50,000 Protestant groups, kind of depending on how you define them. Because, if you say Methodists, well, there's a bunch of different Methodists. There's African Methodist Episcopal. There's Methodist churches that are still fairly close with Anglicanism. There's a different Wesleyan movement. So, even in America, you have different Methodist movements. You had the Methodist movement just split like last year. They split again. So all these, all the churches are splitting over time. So that's part of it, is they've just been around a long time, and they split. So Daniel, you want to address that too?
Yeah, I think it's a really good and valid question. And I think that part of the answer is geographical and historical, in terms of the biggest splits within the church have taken place because, the church in Rome grows in prominence, and then the church in Constantinople grows in prominence. And then those churches kind of get integrated into the local culture, they get integrated into the local politics, and suddenly you've got some real power struggles there, resulting in a schism in, about 1,000 years into it. And so I think part of it is geographical. I think part of it is also just a matter of the Bible is a very big book, and a lot of teachings within Christianity, and a lot of different facets within Christianity. And you do have this branch of Christianity that really makes this part of Christianity, this is kind of their thing. And then another branch says, well, actually, this is the most important thing. And ideally, the churches would try to be able to focus on all these things. But I do think that different churches often sees different facets of Christianity and make that their main thing. And I think that really does explain why a lot of different branches have emerged. But I would say it's unfortunate. But I also think that there is something beautiful in that Christianity can go into any type of culture, and like, yeast in bread, it can, in the dough, it can kind of infiltrate and bring about good things in that culture on the basis of the belief in Jesus. But it's a very good question. And I would say it's a valid critique of Christianity.
Yeah. Well, one thing which I know is, from having done a lot of disaster response work in the LA fires, like the majority of the groups that were coming out to do any assistance, and that were faith-based. And that was just so refreshing to see, because that's how we came out as volunteer ministers of the Church Scientology. And we met so many other groups, many different Christian denominations that were all out there doing something to help. And whatever it was. And that was just, for me, that is a very perfect example of religious life.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to, again, just bring that up. That's what we need to, just keep doing that. And otherwise, I really don't have any other questions. I feel like it's just a basis of working on an interfaith basis and collaborating whenever we can is the most important. That is like the predominant factor.
Susanna, I want to ask you, and this is kind of personal, so you don't have to answer this, but you were in Sweden, which is a famously Protestant place. What was your view of Christianity as you were growing up? Was it already kind of fading, or was it still strong? I mean, I'd love to hear kind of what you saw before you migrated to the U.S.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yes and no. It is kind of interesting, because when I came to America, I was so impressed with how many different types of houses of worship I would find everywhere. It was really cool. Growing up, I loved the Christian churches. We always, because it was a tradition, and it was part of Swedish history. And I'm a total history buff.
Oh,
And I
good.
love Swedish culture. So so I love the churches. They were like very peaceful places and beautiful inside. And a lot of them are very old. And every village had a church. And so every year, every school year, when it was like before Christmas, we always had a gathering in the church. And every year when we ended the school for summer, we always had a gathering in the church. And it didn't, like, nobody questioned it. It wasn't like, oh, I'm not going to go because I'm not Christian. Oh, I'm not going to go because of that. It was just what we all did. And it was a beautiful tradition. And it was like no challenge on that. We just did it, but that's what you do in school. And it was just lovely. The churches were very nice. The priests were very nice. And it was just an opportunity for the whole school to gather, because we didn't really have another gathering place for all the students at the same time. And it was just
naturally, that's where you gathered in Sweden. You went to the church.
naturally, absolutely. So for me, it was just a beautiful part of Swedish tradition.
I'm going to have to give a shameless plug here, and I don't mean to do this, Daniel, but I have to right now. So I have a book that just came out. It's called Christ and Culture, A Global Perspective. And what I do in that book is I look at Christianity in 7 or 8 chapters, but each chapter is about Christianity in a particular culture. And so I use seven cities. One of my cities is Stockholm.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's
So
where
I
I'm
kind of talk about what's happened, because my wife and I took a trip there. Janet was there, I believe so.
Yeah.
But we took a trip there, and I got to experience for quite a long extended stay. I got to experience Christianity in Stockholm, and so I wrote a chapter about it. But the direction I went in that chapter is very kind of secular. It was kind of a secular moving away from Christianity, because you talked about how peaceful the churches are, and I can guarantee if you walk into a church in Stockholm, nobody's going to be there, and it's very peaceful. I mean, the churches it's just, they're not attended anymore. It's the strangest thing when you come from the United States, where churches are often bustling places, but they're just not in Stockholm. And I've been to a lot of secular European countries, but Stockholm, Sweden is very secular. Now, you do have immigrant communities that are starting to kind of bring Christianity back, but kind of the native Swedish population has kind of, I think they appreciate Christianity, but they just don't, they appreciate, like you said, they appreciate the history. In fact, in one of my...
Yeah, I know. Exactly. It is appreciation of the architecture, but it's not the same on the theology.
Mhm.
And I don't know, I mean, it has a violent history in Sweden. And part of the problem were that you have kings that were using the religion in the wrong way, and they were killing people in the name of God, and we're going to go into crusades in the name of God, and all these things happen in the name of God. So it was not, very, help the man on the street to have that happen, or the guy who was running his farm and was trying to feed his family. It was just not, it didn't become that help. But that is obviously way back when. Now we've been a peaceful country for many, many, many years. We had no war for over 200 years. I mean, I was talking way back in history. For like more closer to, present, it has been an institution to help people. And why people have gone so far away from religious life, I don't know. Yes, maybe, all the materialistic was more appealing. I don't actually know. It is a point of survey. And why the American population is so different is very fascinating to me. It is like a point of survey to me. Why?
Yeah, well, I've tried to address that in different places, and one of the theories is that people are put out with kind of the specific history, and I'm not going to go into this deeply here, but one of the theories is that there are new kind of for example, in one of my interviews that I did with a Swedish person, fascinating interview, they said, in Sweden, we don't believe in God, we believe in people. But if you dig down deep, a lot of that believing in people, the foundation of some of those ideas are actually Christian ideas, like do unto others as you would have them do.
Absolutely.
So like there's these Christian assumptions that if you ask Swedish people, they'll tell you, what's right and wrong. And most of those things are very Christian. It's just get them to go to church is hard.
I fully agree with you. I fully agree with you. And I even heard this concept that in Sweden, like, oh, I'm not religious, but I am spiritual.
Spiritual.
So,
exactly.
Yeah, that is another by survey, something that came up. And I was like, well, there's hope.
Well, Daniel, how are we doing on time? I didn't make note of when we started.
I'd say maybe 3 more minutes.
Okay. Well, let's delve into our final question. And so, Susanna, this has been great. You're a really fun conversation partner, and thank you for taking the time to do this. Give my regards to the colleagues that I know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but if a Christian is listening to this, because this podcast is designed mainly for a Christian audience, if there's a Christian listening to this who wants to be helpful to Scientologists, or maybe wants to make a connection to Scientologists, how can a Christian be helpful, be hospitable, be kind to their local Scientology center?
They would love if they would come over for a visit to say hi. And make that connection and say, you just come in and say hi. I wanted to see what you do and what you believe in. And they will be happily to give them a tour and show them what we do. And because we work on so many secular humanitarian programs on drug education, on human rights, on disaster response, on tutoring, all these different arenas that we work in the community, and we love to partner with other groups. So they will be so happy to get a visit to show that.
Well, a good place to start is Scientology has a very nice television channel on, at least on my television, on DirecTV. I don't know the number, but it's
320.
What's the number?
320.
320. Yeah, sometimes I'll watch that because of my the interactions I've had with Scientologists over the year. It's always very slick and very nice and very high quality. I mean, it's amazing. Yeah. You don't see grainy video. It's always very polished. So kudos.
And we work hard on just using that as a TV station that promoting good news and humanitarian work. We have one of the chapters we run on that is called Voices for Humanity. And that is just people that work in incredible humanitarian projects, like in different countries all over the world.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so you're saying that Christians should just pop in, right? No, right. They don't need to call and make an appointment. They just go to the Scientology Center.
Exactly.
Okay, just walk in and say, "Hey, I'm interested. Can I? What can you show me?"
Yeah, just like you can say, like, I'm a Christian. I'm just here to learn more, to connect and interfaith. I just want to find out what you do.
Okay, yeah, just out of curiosity. I know there's a Scientology center on the Walk of Fame in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And, I know people will just pop in there to, use the bathroom or get a drink or something. And because of my connections with Scientology, friends that I've had, I walked in there and they took care of me. I had my kids. We have 4 kids. My wife and I, we were so tired, walking around. You know the street I'm talking about, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. You walked into our Life Improvement Center. Yeah.
And they were just so friendly. They said, "What can we do for you?" And I said, "We're thirsty." They said, here's some water. So they took care of us, and I felt like I was with people that I could immediately trust. And of course, I bring up my friends that I know in Scientology. They're like, "Oh yeah, we know them." So that's always
nice. Yeah. That's wonderful.
Well, good. Susanna, thank you for spending this time with us.
Thank you.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, it was fun. I love engaging in these conversations. And if you have any other questions or any other thing you do in the future, I'll be happy to help.